Okay, so for a moment there, you could almost hear like the collective global sigh of relief, right? We just watched this incredibly intense whirlwind 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran. It just escalated so fast, and then boom, a ceasefire announcement. Almost. Surprisingly quick. And right on cue, you have Donald Trump stepping in, publicly saying he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for, well, for ending the war. So our mission today really is to try and cut through all that noise, because there are just conflicting claims flying absolutely everywhere. You've got Trump taking credit. Then you hear Iran saying he actually begged for it. It's that classic Middle East situation, trying to sort the fact from the fiction.
Exactly. And that's really why this deep dive is, I think, so important right now. It's a chance for you, the listener, to kind of move beyond those flashing headlines and the quick sound bites. We want to really get into the complex layers beneath all that, explore what was really going on. What did this whole 12-day flare-up actually show us about power dynamics, about alliances, and these bigger global shifts that honestly affect everyone?
Okay, let's do that. Let's unpack the chronology first, because, wow, it moved fast. We need that timeline of Operation Rising Lion, as Israel called it, just to make sense of the sequence. It all kicked off June 13th, Israel's surprise attack on Iran. The stated reason was, countering Iran's alleged nuclear weapons program.
Right, and Iran, they didn't wait around. Their response was immediate. It was sustained. You couldn't ignore it. For more than 9 days, they were just hammering Israel with these, well, analysts called them barrages of ballistic missiles. That put huge, almost unprecedented pressure on Israel's defenses.
Yeah, that level of just constant incoming must have really changed the calculation. And then, June 21st, America steps in. The U.S. responds to Israel asking for help, right? Deploying those large GBU bombs, the bunker busters, aimed specifically at Iran's nuclear sites.
And what's interesting there, or maybe confusing, is the immediate ambiguity around those strikes. Within like 24 hours, it wasn't even clear if they'd actually damaged the centrifuges significantly, or the 60% enriched uranium. Did they hit it? Did they not? Hard to say initially, but the escalation, that definitely continued. June 23rd, Iran fires 6 ballistic missiles and the target. The U.S. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Now, that's America's biggest base in the whole region. That moment, that really felt like a World War III alarm going off for a lot of people. Serious stuff.
It absolutely did. And then the narrative just takes this really weird turn with Trump's reaction. Almost instantly after the Al Udeid attack, he tweets, and he says, "I am pleased to report no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done." It seemed like he was really downplaying it, suggesting Iran had, quote, gotten it out of the system. He even claimed there was early notice before the attack. Then later that same night, well, early morning, June 23rd, India time, he goes on Truth Social, announces a complete and total ceasefire, says it'll start within hours, Iran first, then Israel, supposedly ending the whole 12-day war just like that.
Yeah, and naturally, the initial reaction was skepticism, lots of it. Iranian state media came out almost immediately and just flatly rejected it, called it, I think, a fabrication. But then you saw this slight shift, a bit more nuanced. Iran's foreign minister put out this pretty significant tweet basically saying, look, we were attacked by Israel, not the other way around, and a ceasefire. That only happens if Israel stops its aggression. But the reality was still messy, Even after Trump announced the ceasefire, the IDF, Israel's military, was reporting more missile waves coming from Iran, and Trump's just tweeting, urging both sides, hey, don't violate the truce. It was like this bizarre public negotiation playing out. Eventually, Iranian state TV kind of framed it differently. They claimed the cost of the ceasefire was imposed on the enemy, but only after Iran had responded to U.S. aggression. It was very much a face-saving spin. And then finally, Netanyahu in Israel, after quite a bit of pressure, he also agreed. He claimed Israel got everything it wanted from Operation Rising Lion. So they removed dual immediate existential threats, nuclear and missiles, and damaged Iran's military leadership, intelligence, the whole nuclear program, lots of claims.
It's such a strange dance, isn't it, where perception seems almost more important than the facts on the ground sometimes. So, okay, let's get past the victory laps and the headlines. The really crucial question is, what actually happened? What were the real outcomes, maybe even unintended ones? Who actually came out of this 12-day fight, looking stronger or achieving their aims? Because the stated goals for the U.S. and Israel seem pretty clear. Take out Iran's nuclear program, maybe even push for regime change.
Right. Well, let's break that down. Were those goals met? On the nuclear program, the consensus among international experts seems to be it was pushback, but this is key, not destroyed. So it's not really a clear win, more like a strategic pause, maybe, which changes things for everyone involved. It forces you to rethink what success even means here. And it raises that big question, does Iran come back to negotiate now? Or does the opposite happen? There's a real risk, and people are talking about this, that Iran might just kick out the IAEA inspectors, the UN watchdog folks. They could withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, just like Israel did years ago, and actually speed up their work towards a bomb. That would be, frankly, a huge embarrassment for Israel, a major strategic failure. And something else, this conflict, it really, it completely destroyed the kind of pride or aura around Israel's defense systems. Iron Dome, Arrow 2, Arrow 3. Iran showed it could hit back hard and alone without needing outside support initially. Israel ended up having to ask the U.S. for help. That's a significant shift in perception. As for the U.S. side, yeah, they got involved for that one day, but was the goal achieved? Not really clear. In Trump's face, they definitely didn't want another war. So maybe for Trump, getting that Nobel Peace Prize nod is, well, maybe the only real win he can claim from this whole episode.
So it sounds like a very carefully managed de-escalation, maybe, where both sides needed a story, a narrative to kind of save face without actually giving up too much strategically. And Iran, they must have known that hitting the U.S. directly, like really hitting them hard, would just lead to massive retaliation, maybe even their own destruction.
Exactly right. And that's where that Al-Udeid attack comes in. It served as a kind of exit ramp, or maybe an honorable discharge, as some analysts put it, giving that warning beforehand, making sure, crucially, that no American soldier was killed. That was the key. It stopped the U.S. from getting dragged into a much bigger, longer fight. So it allowed both sides to sort of claim victory, you know? Iran could say, see, we can hit back, even at the U.S., and the U.S. could say, our big bombs worked, we degraded their nuclear facilities. Everyone gets a narrative.
Okay, but while the U.S. is doing its thing, and Iran is doing its thing, there's this other huge player working behind the scenes, right? Someone whose influence might have really shaped how this all played out, even if they weren't dropping bombs or making loud announcements. I'm talking about China.
Yes, absolutely. China's role here is critical and often underestimated because they don't do the big headlines or the dramatic tweets, but their influence is deep. Look at some concrete examples. The U.S. actually asked China to pressure Iran not to close the Strait of Hormuz. That tells you something about China's leverage, doesn't it? Then there's the new Iran-China railway line. It's huge, 10,400 kilometers. A freight corridor launched just last year, May 2025. The first train arrived May 25th. This thing is part of China's Big Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, and it cuts trade time dramatically from maybe 30, 40 days by sea down to just 15 by rail. Cheaper, faster, and here's the crucial part. This railway lets Iran export its oil and import goods, basically bypassing U.S. sanctions. Think about this. China buys something like 90% of Iran's oil exports. Iran gives them a stable, cheap supply. With that kind of economic dependency, China's just not going to let the U.S. easily attack Iran. It's not in their interest at all. Plus, you have that massive $400 billion, 25-year cooperation deal they signed. That cements the partnership. It even goes down to technology. Iran uses China's satellite navigation system, BDS, not the American GPS.
Wow. So when you put all that together, the railway, the oil, the big deal, the tech, does it mean that the U.S. isn't just dealing with Iran anymore? Is it more like dealing with Iran with China standing right behind them? Does that change the whole game?
I think it does. That's a really critical point. It points towards this shifting global landscape, maybe even a kind of parallel global order emerging, one where traditional Western tools like sanctions just don't have the same bite they used to, because countries like Iran have alternatives, largely thanks to China. It reshapes how these conflicts might play out in the future. Look, maybe there will be more bombings, more flare-ups, but fundamentally, I think all sides, the U.S., Israel, Iran, and China, watching closely, they understand that a long, indefinite conflict doesn't really benefit anyone. Everyone has their own strategic cards to play: stealth bombers, ballistic missiles, regional influence, economic ties. It becomes more about deterrence, about managing conflict, rather than aiming for some kind of total victory.
This has really peeled back so many layers. We started with Trump's Nobel claim, and now we're looking at this incredibly complex global chess game involving China, trade routes, nuclear programs. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In this kind of environment, how much of a conflict is actually fought with weapons, and how much is fought over the narrative, over perception?
And that brings us to a final, maybe more somber thought. Despite all this high-level maneuvering, the focus on nuclear capabilities, this delicate dance of power we've been talking about, the human suffering in Gaza, unfortunately, just continues. Sources on the ground, observers, they consistently highlight this grim reality. Gaza has no ballistic missiles. It has no superpower backing it up. And the situation there is frequently described using terms like genocide, while much of the international community seems to just, well, stand by and watch. So this deep dive also kind of underscores a tragic point. Even when these major power conflicts get diffused, even when ceasefires are announced, the most vulnerable people can still be tragically overlooked, still bearing the absolute heaviest price.